running it roll, circle in black, and the heart was, chambers were still preserved. So anyway, we can do that later, but frozen, and then of course dried in the Aleutian chain, for example, opposite. They used to have the custom crawling up in the Aleutian chain in Alaska, up in these high dry caves, extremely arid, and racked and treated and minimally preserved, hair details, and all that sort of stuff. And of course you can get all kinds of information from hair, skin, and everything else. One of them is heavy metals that people have gotten out of other places where it dried, the Andes, all through. There must be 10,000 of these now have been worked out of huge cemeteries full that are just being, in fact, excavated as I speak this last summer. So, frozen, dried, and then I say prepared, not to eat, but prepared. I'm talking about entombment process, like Egypt and stuff. So, where we know, as I mentioned the other day, one of the things that we know already about one of the main kings, Ramesses, is that he had schistosomiasis. We looked at that worm thing, but he also had polio. Poliovirus is quite an old virus. And you could see the deformation and the lack of growth in one of the legs. And then it takes us over here on DNA analysis, because that stuff is preserved so well. It just takes off tissue. And in many cases, you get preservation of the actual pathogen or its biochemical residues. You know, that's all technical stuff that in this class I wouldn't even ask you. I know some of you, this gal happens to be a nurse for a long time, but a certain kind of macolic acids, for example, have decayed with certain kinds of bacteria, and those can be all fingerprinted. And so we actually know what the last, if that disease, if that pathogen was in that person when it died, that often gets impregnated not only in soft tissue, but it works its way to bone. And that's what the other end of this thing crosses over from DNA analysis over to skeletal business and teeth. But enough about that. Let's go, and I'm afraid, Todd, that, yeah, that's going to be shown right behind you. We looked at this the other day a little bit, but I rushed through the idea, and I'd like you to think for a few moments. Use your own mind. Look at, again, these are all interacting systems, huh? We have cultural systems, which all of us living in societies, you don't think about what language you speak or how you're supposed to act. You know, you have subcultures in the military. I was talking to Ian earlier. I was in the Army for long enough that when 10 years later in graduate school with Blackbeard, and I was running upstairs and there was ROTC major or something coming down, and I automatically, in that subculture you just programmed, I started saluting, but kind of got embarrassed. I've already been out about 10 years in graduate school. So you have this culture stuff. This is our way of life. That's what culture is. It's everything that we grew up with, our ideas, our attitudes, our beliefs, our value systems. So that's ideology. But also our social structure. So those, see how those circles go around? And those supported technology. Social organization and ideology, and this is largely a capitalist society as an ideology economic system. So obviously ideas and the way you're programmed to buy and spend and keep your neighbor busy by doing that, that makes capitalism go around, doesn't it? And then the technology that people use makes a whole bunch of difference. Can you find with just that system, what would be some examples you would hypothesize, or even just thinking about, you probably know, what would be some things here? How would this affect? Just that one circle there, the three things within it, ideology or social organization or technology. How does that affect your risk factors of certain kinds of diseases or malformations and diabetes, let's say? We already know, we could answer that pretty easy, couldn't we? But anything else? Think about it. Anybody have an idea?
I was just thinking, as far as sociology goes, maybe like a standard of living, like a...
Okay. Standard of living, poverty is a breeding ground for, in what ways? Give some example. How does poverty...
They generally don't have the best medical treatment. They don't have the best they don't have the best food to eat, which diseases can be born.
There you go. Go ahead.
There's a bunch of
I'm
things.
listening.
They might not have the amount of money or the right stuff to, you know, practice proper hygiene, stuff like that. There's all kinds of things that can go into it.
Okay. And if you, somewhere here, I thought I had, I don't need it for my PowerPoint, but I need it for this one. Oh, yeah. Pretty old, I don't even know if I've got batteries anymore. But here's what Joel was saying then. So that nutrition comes down into here, a certain subpopulation, down to the individual, down to the tissues and cells, huh? So that individual, or those, a group, if you want to say, immune system isn't functioning. Let me give you an example. For many, I was at MIT for a summer working with some folks that are on nutrition for dummy anthropologists. It was a 2-month. One of the people that came and talked to us had worked in Guatemala for like 20 years with rural Guatemalans and who largely Indian origin, indigenous people usually end up the lowest rung of the ladder, even though they were here way before we, and we'll talk more about some of that colonial kind of thing and imperialism, that how it affected them through history when we get to smallpox. But in many cases, measles, and it was not a particularly different variant strain, had a tremendously high kill rate, if you want to say, mortality rate, as we would say, case fatality rate in epidemiology, compared to our kids here. Generally, kids here get measles, they shouldn't because they should have been vaccinated. But they get it, they're going to be sick a few days, but because poverty, exactly what Joel raised, and the interrelated aspects of poverty, cold exposure, house, and nutrition primarily, they found that when they increased the nutrition, just by some supplementation, they looked at that after a couple more years, and all kinds of markers dropped closer to the wealthier Spanish derived genes that have pretty much run the place down in much of that area, Latin America as a whole. So those are some of the twists and turns that we don't always think about maybe. So you want to run things through these levels from here. Anybody else? Quick, comes to your mind. Sorry, I'm sorry, I don't hear real well.
The culture, your ideology, there are groups of people that don't believe in modern medicine, Western medicine.
That's true.
You know, some of them, they tend to just pray
Sometimes
to whoever they pray to try to get this thing taken care of.
it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
belief systems. Once did a little thing about Haiti, because there's a friend that worked down there in the voodoo system. Belief can heal and belief can kill, affecting your physiology. You believe sincerely in that finger when you're marked, it starts affecting the physiology, and indeed, if you're a part of this ideology in a very strong way from little on, and the stories you heard at night with sounds and darkness and everything else, it will affect you, and there have been folks studying that, in fact. So, belief in many different ways, not seeking medicine early enough,
Right.
Not the proper medicine, and certainly, and again, often related to poverty, but not exclusively, as Todd points out.
Socially, right now in New York State, there was a group of 12 girls in high school who have developed symptoms like Tourette's and tics.
Yeah, like that.
They've brought in pathologists, they brought in all these doctors. They were finally diagnosed with mass hysteria.
Yeah.
They literally have found
yeah.
nothing
You
to
bet.
support it.
It all
Yeah.
starts up here, doesn't it? I mean,
I saw one of those girls, she was not faking.
It's not necessarily faking. You're affected by what you believe in here.
These girls know each other?
Yeah,
they're all
they all go
in
to
the same
school,
high
it's in the same high school.
And ironically, it's all girls.
Yeah, it was all girls. This girl was all twisted, it looked like it hurt her neck and stuff, it was scary. She looked like it hurt.
let's look at this one now, abiotic, which is obviously non-life. But see, there's this connection, isn't it? I mean, cultures
develop around what's available, the kind of climate, which dictates the kind of pathogens, the kind of food that can be grown, et cetera, et cetera. Is there a way, let me mention something that, because again, I'm just pretty familiar with it. In terms of abiotic soils, materials we would put, I remember going to a conference probably 20 years ago now, but there was a man talking about entire building